right, welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of Wolf Watch. I'm your host, Keith Johnson, and today's debunking of Wolfgang Halbig's latest nonsense comes to us courtesy of the good folks over at Sandy Hook Tragedy Focus on Facts. No, it is not a website, it's actually a Facebook page, but I cannot recommend this resource highly enough because it's run by my good friend and research partner, Mike Flagg, who does an excellent job of tracking and debunking all of the latest Sandy Hook conspiracy theories. So please check that page out at your earliest convenience. And here's his latest post, or at least it was when I sat down to make this video this morning, posted on August 27th. And it's concerning allegations made by Wolfgang Halbig in an email that he sent to Brenda Bergeron. And Brenda Bergeron, in case you're unaware, is the legal advisor for the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Emergency Management, and Homeland Security. Okay, well, here is that email written in Wolfgang Halbig's distinctive illiterate style. He writes, Brenda, I hope you have one of those Obama get out jail free card because we just had a forensic expert blow up that ID badge and you are not going to believe who that is. He's referring to this ID badge and the gentleman wearing it. I am sure you will recognize him quickly. I am a person who is always upfront, very open, as you can see, since you have yet to send me my Connecticut Freedom of Information Act response on your official Homeland Security letterhead. How did you think you were going to get away with it, and you are an officer of the court? Wish you well in days to come. Please say hi to him for me and tell him I look forward in meeting him in person. Again, referring to this gentleman. And then there's this, oh, by the way, isn't that Matoli as a 4th or 5th grader at the funeral? Wolfgang W. Halbig. And he inserts this caption here at the bottom of this photograph. Who wears their photo ID at a funeral? He is a controller of the event. All right. Well, first of all, we have 2 cases of mistaken identity here. First with this gentleman. And then, as an aside, this child who he mistakenly identifies as slain 6-year-old James Mattioli. He has his name spelled wrong here. Okay, so now, if you're already lost, let me try to bring you up to speed here. First of all, Wolfgang is being evasive or cryptic in this email. However, if you've followed his antics for as long as I have, you know exactly where he's coming from. What he's implying or suggesting is that this individual here, this gentleman that you see, is a higher up with the Connecticut State Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, either as a controller or regional coordinator, whatever. That's why he makes that snide remark to Brenda saying you will recognize him quickly because, according to Halbig, they work for the same state agency. As far as the ID tag here in that email, Wolfgang says that his forensic expert, quote unquote, blew up the badge, meaning they made it larger and were able to make out either the name of this individual or some text that says Connecticut State Department of Homeland Security to prove Wolfgang's point, you see. But all of that is pure bullshit. Wolfgang is lying through his teeth. And I certainly intend to back up that very bold statement with significant evidence. But before we do that, I want to direct your attention to a previous video of mine, which you will find on this channel, from June 11th. Sandy Hook Facts debunks Wolfgang Halbig's EMS director claim. Sandy Hook Facts, of course, being the website run by my good friend and colleague, C.W. Wade. And what he has done is disproven Wolfgang Halbig's claim that a Region 1 director from the Department of Homeland Security, state of Connecticut that is, a Region 1 director was spotted on scene at the Sandy Hook Elementary School on the day of the shooting, December 14, 2012, in dash cam footage, posing as a Connecticut state trooper, thereby proving Wolfgang Halbig's theory that the shooting never took place and this was merely a Department of Homeland Security drill or capstone event, as he likes to put it. So you need to watch that video, ladies and gentlemen. That's a prerequisite because what Wolfgang did back in June is exactly what he is doing now in this most recent email, and that is accusing someone of being someone they are not. In this previous case, the gentleman who you see before you on the screen is clearly a young Connecticut State Trooper, but not so, says Wolfgang Halbig. This guy is just dressed up as a Connecticut State Trooper. Who he really is, his true identity, is this gentleman here, Robert Kenny, Region 1 Coordinator for the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Emergency Management, and Homeland Security, State of Connecticut. Region 1 being the Bridgeport area. Now, how did Wolfgang Halbig come to this conclusion? No one knows. All we can assume is that both individuals have bald heads.
We have found the witch. May we burn her? How do you know she is a witch? She looks like one.
Stay right there. Keep that picture up, guys. Just take a look at him. This is the guy who's a regional coordinator, a very powerful position. All the trainers work under him. Now, that's where your FOIA request should go. They should never go to Washington, D.C. Don't send them to Homeland Washington or FEMA Washington. Keep him in his office and do not let that sucker off the hook.
Now, after listening to Wolfgang's nonsense and looking at the two pictures and determining that they're obviously two different people, C.W. Wade set out to verify that was the case by shooting off an email to the Connecticut State Police. They respond by saying, sir, the trooper in the photo, meaning in the dash cam footage, is Sergeant Troy Anderson. He works out of State Police Headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut. In other words, no, he's not a Region 1 coordinator. He's not Robert Kenny. He is a Connecticut State Trooper. But please, by no means, take my word for it or the word of C.W. Wade. Search the internet for yourself. You'll find ample pictures of Sergeant Troy Anderson. Here's one right here at the Connecticut State Police ceremony honoring the Sandy Hook responders. Yeah, major blunder for Wolfgang Halbig. I mean, if it was a blunder, I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt. As far as we know, it could have been deliberate, but let's move on. No need to reiterate what I've already presented in a previous video. Go check that out. You'll learn why this trooper was there, what his job capacity was, why he was handing out forms. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is representative of what hoaxers do all the time. They're constantly accusing people of being someone they're not, and they're so desperate to make their point that they have no problem manufacturing evidence to frame their targets.
They dressed me up like this. And this isn't my nose, it's a false one.
Well, we did do the nose. The nose? And the hat. But she's a witch.
You know, some things haven't changed a lot since the Dark Ages, have they? But, folks, when it comes to manufacturing evidence and dressing people up to be the big bad villains that they are not, well, that's precisely what Halbig is doing here in this latest email to Brenda. Let me direct your attention to this excerpt where he writes, "We just had a forensic expert blow up that ID badge, and you are not going to believe who that is. I am sure you will recognize him quickly." Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a bald-faced lie. Wolfgang Halbig does not have a forensic expert who blew up, meaning enlarged or made clearer, this ID badge, this one right here, to reveal the name of this individual or the name of a department or agency, whether that be state or local or federal, any information at all that would substantiate Wolfgang Halbig's claim that this person who you see standing before you is a quote-unquote controller of the event. Wolfgang Halbig is lying through his teeth. He has no clue who this person is. I know who it is. I know what their name is, and I'm going to reveal that in a couple minutes. Now, since he makes no mention of it in his email, we can only speculate as to whom Wolfgang Halbig believes this person to be. If I was to take a wild guess, I would say that this is just the latest suspect to be accused of being Connecticut Homeland Security Region 1 Coordinator Robert Kenney. But regardless of what name Halbig throws out there, he's going to be wrong. Because contrary to what he'd like you to believe, this is not a state or federal agent. He is not a coordinator of any FEMA capstone drill. He's not here at the Jack Pinto funeral to oversee operations and make sure that all these crisis actors are playing their roles correctly and not flubbing their lines. That's all a fantasy. Now, I'm going to take you step by step in the research that was done to determine who this person really is. Okay, so we're back to this photograph, and remember Halbig said that his so-called forensic expert enlarged this photograph. Well, so did Mike over there at Sandy Hook Tragedy Focus on Facts for the purpose of determining if there's any identifying information on this individual. Now, we'll start here enlarging this ID card. That tells us very little. Can't read the text here. All you can see is kind of the general layout of how this ID card looks. However, look what we have here on this gentleman's baseball cap. It says in very clear letters, Billy Graham. And there's the cross on top. Billy Graham, of course, being the very well-known televangelist, Christian leader, very popular. So, armed with this information, Mike set out to see if there was any connection between Billy Graham and Sandy Hook. And sure enough, with a minimal amount of research, Mike determined that there was a connection. Billy Graham was there, at least his people were. We have this first story coming to us from WSOC TV from December 15, 2012. Chaplains from Billy Graham's Rapid Response Team offering support in Connecticut. Story reads, about 15 chaplains from the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team are on the ground Saturday in Connecticut following Friday's shooting at an elementary school. They're providing emotional and spiritual help to those affected. They are also trained in crisis management. Further on down here, it says that they're even expected to stay in Connecticut through the holidays. Back to this photo. Let's take a look at that hat again. Billy Graham, Rapid Response Team. While we're here on this photograph, take note of what this gentleman's wearing. Not just the hat, but the style of jacket, the blue shirt underneath, the red lanyard holding this ID card. Let's take a look at that ID card once more. All right, got it? Well, that's pretty much the uniform that these chaplains wear. I mean, if you go to the Billy Graham website, you'll find quite a few stories documenting the time that they spent there. If we scroll down, we get a really good picture of one of these chaplains who were there. See here, same hat, Billy Graham Rapid Response Team. The red lanyard, the ID card with the same kind of layout as the other gentleman, same style jacket, blue shirt underneath. Now this is a different chaplain than the individual in the previous photograph. Now let's take a closer look at that ID card from the photo we're all too familiar with now. As you can see, this ID card is identical to this one. This is also a Billy Graham chaplain at the site of another tragedy, completely different from Sandy Hook, but you can see it's the same ID card. See that red border at the bottom, red border here, same positioning of the photograph. Yeah, that's a Billy Graham identification card, not Homeland Security, FEMA, or anything like that. Now, going back to Wolfgang's email, our pseudo mass casualty expert writes this at the bottom of the page. Who wears their photo ID at a funeral? Well, they do, Wolfgang. And we know this from reading a portion of this story, which comes to us once again off the Billy Graham website. It was posted on December 19, 2012. We scroll down a little bit here, and we learn a chaplain is being made available for each of the 20 funerals that have started this week. So there you have it, folks. Chaplains were there on scene in Newtown a day after the shooting and on multiple days, including the days that these 20 funerals were held, including the Jack Pinto funeral where the aforementioned gentleman can be seen. And they were there to provide emotional and spiritual support, and they made their presence known by wearing their standard uniform, which includes an identification card. You have to understand, folks, that these chaplains came in from all across the United States, not just locally, but all over the place. As a matter of fact, the chaplain who we're about to identify flew in all the way from California. And the only reason I know this is because I asked. I sent that photograph over to people at Billy Graham's Evangelistic Association, posing the question if they could help us identify who that gentleman was. And they said, good afternoon, Mr. Johnson. Yes, the gentleman in the attached picture is Ray Thompson of Southern California, one of our Billy Graham Rapid Response Team chaplains. So, folks, this is my only, aside from doing this video, this is my only contribution to the research. Everything prior to that, I have to give credit to Mike and Tom over there at Sandy Hook Tragedy Focus on Facts. But yes, they identified that person as Ray Thompson of Southern California. And that's good to know, not just for purposes of this debunking, but perhaps even more importantly for an upcoming piece I'm going to be writing for the Newtown Post Examiner. Yes, that is a website that I run. And this piece is going to commemorate and honor all of those people and organizations who lent a hand, who showed support on December 14th, 2012, and in the days that followed. There were so many people, and their presence is known in a variety of different articles that are spread throughout the internet. I hope to bring all of those together in one place, and I should have that ready sometime at the end of November, so look for that. Okay, and here's another picture of Chaplain Thompson. This one comes to us from the Los Angeles Times, and their caption reads, Styles and Chaplain Ray Thompson left, that's this gentleman here, pray with John Lewis, who I assume is this fellow, whose Anaheim Hills apartment narrowly escaped burning. So you see, that's what Chaplain Thompson does. He responds to the scene of tragic events, not just Sandy Hook, but others that occur throughout the country, and he's there to provide emotional and spiritual support. He is not a coordinator with the Department of Homeland Security or a Region 1 controller or anything like that. That was a fantasy that was created exclusively in the mind of Wolfgang Halbig. And yes, folks, I did feel it necessary to take that extra step and positively identify who this gentleman was, because if we didn't, I know what the hoaxers would do. Wolfgang Halbig or one of his supporters would just flip the script and say, well, we still believe this is Robert Kenney or this person or that person. They're simply dressed up like a chaplain with the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team. They do the same thing that they tried to do with that Connecticut State Trooper. Well, I just took that away from you. You're unable to make that claim because we have this gentleman positively identified. Now, remember, folks, this same pair of eyes that this wolf is using to come up with these absurd allegations against people, allegations that we have thoroughly debunked, this same set of eyes is what he is using to examine footage of the 2013 Super Bowl. And through that examination, he has determined that the children who sang that day are actually the children who we were told were slain on December 14, 2012. Those same eyes. So you see the insanity that we're dealing with here, folks? And you see now why I am documenting each and every one of Wolfgang's cases of mistaken identity? Because he's using that as a fundraising mechanism. He wants to find those children. He wants to find those children's parents and make their lives miserable. We have to put a stop to that. So what you can do is help spread the word. Get these videos out to your friends and relatives, and perhaps we can shut this thing down.